Hello, Rolando. Hello.
Well, first, I'd like to know if it was important for you to come here to present the movie.
I can't tell you how thrilled and anxious I was when we got the invitation. It was something I always hoped for when we were making the movie. We made most of the movie in Uruguay, but with a lot of Argentinian crew and cast. I spent a lot of time here casting the movie. And obviously, it's a hugely important work of world literature, but Argentinian literature. So it was something I always hoped that I would get to be here to present the movie in Manuel Puig's home country. But it made me nervous. It made me nervous too, because I've never pretended that this is an entirely authentic presentation, because it's an American movie. It's made in English. It's a group of actors, all of them Latino, but from various Latin cultures, So it's humbling to present, and it was interesting. I was nervous coming, and then we had this reception for about 3 hours before, and then I talked to people after, and I was just struck by how open everyone was. That it felt as if they, I think in other countries, there might have been more of a defensiveness, not defensiveness, but a kind of some kind of resentment. But it didn't feel that way at all. I felt very welcome, and it was a wonderful.
Maybe that thing that you say, that other countries, where they should something about according to the countries, has some resistance to watch. But we have a long tradition also in musical, like Evita, and maybe that's why we don't receive the movie well.
I love thank you, because that explains something to me, because musical theater is so important here, that the Candor and Ebb factor, the musical factor, also sort of is part of the balance, right? So
yes,
that really helps. Thank you.
I think maybe that's the reason. And you mentioned the Argentinian actors that play roles in the movie. Tell me, how do you choose? How was the process of casting of Lucia, Federico, all the Argentinian actors?
Well, it was wonderful to meet. Fabio Aste, played Puig in a movie, many years ago. It was incredible to really connect to this extraordinary group of talented actors, and especially, as you say, musical theater actors too, like Federico or Lucia or Mariana Condalucci, who played a drag queen at a drag club in a scene toward the end of the movie that we at the very last minute decided to cut, because it felt like it slowed. You wanted to get to the emotional climax, but it's going to be on the home video. It's a wonderful scene. But take Federico Sanchez, for example. He's a great actor. He's a great actor. He has a great face for film, and he is somebody we seriously considered for Molina. That's how I came across him. He auditioned, and then we met. And at the end of the day, it was unfortunate in some way, but because the film was in English, it just felt as if that was maybe, it wasn't a natural second language for Federico, So I went to him and I offered him 3 parts, because I just was so desperate to have him, and especially to hear which one of them interested him. And he chose Querido, and I have to say it's among my favorite moments in the movie, just being close on his face as he's singing.
It's lovely. It's lovely. Not was Federico, but you have the great Tonatiuh. I like to know, you, along all your career, you discover some young actors. What do you see in Tonatiuh from this role? And he has a great future career.
First of all, it was all the colors of Molina, and there are a lot of them, right? There's wit, there's camp, there's pain, there is kindness. And in the work we did together, in the auditions and everything, he tapped into all of those things. That sometimes, you can find someone who's giving a powerful performance because a character demands, rage or kindness. But and of course, his great talent as an actor and as a musical performer, but this thing that you can't, that's God-given really, which is just eyes and a face that draw you in. And he looks so different throughout the movie. I knew that a lot of it was going to be in close-up because of the intimacy of that cell. And I really enjoyed when I was putting the movie together, just how many different aspects of him get expressed just in different ways, seeing his eyes and face.
In this movie, what was the biggest challenge? We have the book of Manuel Pig, later the movie of the 80s, later the musical. What was the biggest challenge to find something new for the new audiences, generations?
Well, I think that oddly, finding something new by going back to what we wrote, for example, just in terms of issues of gender fluidity and the liberation of not being pinned down to one label. It's still a revolutionary idea that, it's this version is a flat out love story that asks an audience to follow these two characters' journey towards love, and especially the political revolutionary, who has such a resistance to the idea of someone he considers silly, unaware, uninformed, apolitical. He has no respect for that. Finding the humanity, and then also not only finding it, but falling in love with that person. Week had a great idea that you take everything away from two characters. You put them together, they can't escape from each other. They could die any day, and force them to see each other as individuals. And there's aspects of Molina that Valentin falls in love with and is turned on by too, just in that way. I think that was a story that hadn't been told in previous versions.
Of course. The last question, tell me something about J-Lo. How do you work with she in this incredible dance and musical choreography?
She's a force of nature. I've never seen anything like it, and I've worked with Beyonce, but this was just we shot all of that in 3.5 weeks. She did 11 numbers, she did 3 or 4 a week, and she'd, been rehearsing, and she was never the problem. When we were shooting and it got to be late, she was always perfect. So her perfectionism, I think, was extraordinary. Her commitment, and also just, again, this kind of titanic natural talent, not only as a singer dancer, but as an actress. She brought all that. She worked in the style of a 50s Hollywood performance and made it real. I think there's so much going on in what she's doing that really doesn't really get, as much credit. I was in awe of her, and she plays a diva, but there was no time for any diva behavior, but I never saw it in her. I didn't see all that stuff. So it was interesting too, to have some people have a certain take on her that I didn't see reflected at all when I was there.
Bill, thank you for your time.
Thank you. That was a pleasure.